All right. Monday night. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you had a good start to your week. We're going to run it down tonight like we usually do here on the live Q&A, where we get into everything to do with digital assets that involves being proactive, setting yourself up for success for the coming liquidity event, which we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the macroeconomic conditions that have really set things up for a big move higher in the markets, which is exciting. Excited to see that some of the dominoes that we've been talking about for a long time are stood up and ready to go. Really just everything lining up all at once, which is what I thought was going to happen for a long time. But to see it actually play out that way is it's pretty interesting to actually see that things are aligning like perfectly for the perfect storm for the appreciation on XRP and a lot of these other digital assets that people might be invested in. So again, that's what we're going to run down here tonight on the live. If you have any questions about any of that, if it's involving mitigating taxes after you make a bunch of money in crypto, or if you want to set yourself up on the estate planning side, if you want to earn returns on your XRP or other assets, if you want to be able to borrow against them, if you want to understand infinite banking and insurance policies and what that's going to look like for digital assets, all of that is fair game. So run it up here in the chat, ask good questions like everybody always does, and we'll go ahead and hop into it. So we got Robbie. He says, Jake, I'm hoping to use the IRA assets for yield for the DR product. Yeah, so we can talk about that. With the yield needing to remain within the RIA, would anything keep a 59.5-year-old from pulling the earned yield as desired? Thank you. So you would be able to take distributions from an IRA once you're 59.5 without any taxes, or, well, you still have taxes, but you won't have penalties that you might have, if you were younger. Now, so the DRs, so for people that don't know what the DRs are, Digital Wealth Partners partner with RDC to create an ADR, or American Depository Receipt, against XRP. So this provides an actual way that the investment banks can reflect the value of XRP held at Anchorage underneath DWP's accounts inside their infrastructure. So it gives a QSIP number to the asset and allows it to be registered with the DTCC, and then hopefully be able to release margin against it. We're working with an institutional custodian right now, like a Schwab or a Fidelity, a little lesser known one, to be able to get this product to market and start providing that for our clients. And hopefully, to this person's point here, Robbie, he's asked about yield. So I'm going to talk about two things tonight on the ways you can earn returns or yield. And those are the two things with your XRP. So yield-based products would be low risk, scheduled returns, things that are predictable. As an example, like if you were to have an annuity, or if you were to have a money market or a CD, like exactly how much interest you're going to make over what period of time and when those distributions are going to happen. That is a yield instrument or financial product. Returns can change, right? So depending on the circumstances or the type of returns that somebody's generating, that can fluctuate month to month. And the two products that we brought to market right now before the DRs allow for you to earn returns on your XRP. So again, it's not a fixed rate that you're going to be generating. There are no guarantees, but based on past performance for the funds that we've partnered with to be able to generate that, to be somewhere between 12 and 30% per year is likely the outcome. So that's on the cash on cash or the income fund. And then we also have one to be able to generate more XRP that trades futures. Both of those, and that would pay out in kind if you wanted to earn more XRP on your XRP. So we're still working on the possibility for this inside of an IRA. An IRA is a qualified account. So non-qualified capital is much easier to work with rather than qualified capital. There's a bunch of red tape when it comes to the principal that was invested in an IRA and what you're able to do with that. What we can do if this does work with the DRs would be to reflect that value inside of Fidelity or Schwab, hold your XRP there at Anchorage, and then release a line of margin or credit against it and be able to trade that in very low risk yield bearing products. So one of those might be a laddered treasury strategy or some type of overnight repo that's going to generate somewhere between like 5 and 9% per year. We do have one other partner that will be able to pay 4 to 7% and guarantee that on your XRP. But the assets currently do have to leave Anchorage in order to do that, and that's not something I'm a super big fan of. So anyway, we're working to figure out what that's going to look like. But can't borrow against the assets inside of an IRA, and that's really the limiting factor. The way that we currently provide returns for our clients is that we post those assets up as collateral. There's a line of credit that's issued against them. And with that, they trade that inside those strategies and produce the returns that we're paying out to our clients from the 2 sub-advisors that we're partnered with to be able to facilitate that. So anyway, to go back to your question here, you should be able to pull those desired returns from those yield-bearing products that we are able to put together for the IRAs here in the next 30, 60 days. And that would be no issue if you are 59 and a half. Atlantic Living. How are you? They say, why do you believe there was not a supply shock for ETH when the ETFs were approved? Why do you believe this will be different for XRP? That's a good question. So a lot of people anticipated the ETH ETFs, and we saw a run up in ETH. Previous to that, we really didn't get a rotation of any of the capital from Bitcoin into ETH. And that tends to be what causes the appreciation of alts, right? It wasn't like an alt season. There was just a run for ETH previous to the ETF launch in correlation with Bitcoin and its run up. And so, when we see a rotation out of the Bitcoin ETFs into something else, like the XRP ETFs is what I anticipate happening. I think you're going to get an actual rotation of that liquidity into the XRP ETFs, along with there's a lot of ETH on exchanges also available for purchase. Whereas, Bitcoin, there's less and less Bitcoin over time on the exchanges. We did see an all-time high, but we saw it continue to go up even after that because there's like last week, I think there was 85,000 or 8,500 Bitcoin purchased by the ETFs and only like 3,500 Bitcoin mined over the week. So you can see the supply and demand dynamic there, that the volume that's coming on to the market each week doesn't match what the demand is. And that's why the price stability, and we're seeing a rise in Bitcoin now. Whereas ETH, I'd like to, I don't know the exact numbers on that, but I would suspect that they're probably matching, or there's more ETH on the market than there is demand for it from the ETFs. And that's why we didn't see the supply shock that you mentioned here. For XRP, we're also going to have significantly more ETFs. There's already been 17 ETFs filed for XRP, whereas ETH and Bitcoin both, I think, maybe even combined, don't have a total of 17 ETFs. And I do anticipate that we will get a few more, potentially Vanguard, potentially Fidelity, potentially BlackRock. I think that we could have 20 plus XRP ETFs that do get approved and pushed through. We know that Vanguard did not participate in any of the Bitcoin ETFs, nor did they allow any of their subsidiaries to sell that product to any of their clients. Why? Why would they, remove the possibility of them earning that type of return? Kind of weird to me. So I think, that there's going to be, I think that they're going to participate with the XRP ETFs. We got Keith over here. He says, what's the minimum investment I could send your way if I choose to hold and let you deal with it. Yeah, and that's kind of the point, right? We've curated services where we're able to provide the returns, institutional grade custody. To work with digital wealth partners, you just go to digitalwealthpartners.net and you would click the contact us portion of that. Your assets are going to need to be held in an LLC or a trust in order to participate and become a client. The other thing, the other minimum to be able to become a client is 100,000 XRP or at least $500,000 invested in digital assets. Those are the two thresholds currently. As assets appreciate, obviously the amount of XRP will come down, but the minimum will probably go to 1.1 million. The products that we currently offer are for accredited investors only. So you do need to be accredited in order to be able to participate and earn yield. There are fees associated with this, but the returns significantly outpace the cost of what we charge. So if you'd like more information on that, again, you just want to go to digitalwealthpartners.net and then go to the contact us page there, or you can email info@digitalwealthpartners.net to get more information on the ways to generate returns on your XRP. And we'll have XLM here in the next 6 days. So excited about that. We've got JRS. They say, how do I move my crypto into my LLC after I obtain the LLC through your company? You should have received an SOP or standard operating procedure, which lists exactly how to do that. But the last page of the operating agreement that we supply as a template for our clients has things broken down where you can list your wallet address, the asset type, XRP, XLM, HBAR, Algorand, whatever it is, the amount of the asset, and then the dollar amount on the day that you transferred it. You'll go get that notarized. So you don't have to send it to a new wallet. You don't have to do a bill of sale of your wallet to the LLC. You're contributing the assets that are in that cold wallet to the LLC in exchange for the equity in it. And obviously you have full management and control of the assets inside the LLC because you're the sole owner. So that's the way that you would do it. You list them out there on the capital contributions page, and you would get that page notarized, and that would serve as a timestamp of when that transaction took place. We've got Lefteris Passolos. I probably butchered that. Sorry if I did. Jake, some people believe that Ripple's direct sales of XRP limit its price growth. Has up to this point. That is a valid point. What's your take on this? Will Ripple cooperate with the U.S. government to share the XRP escrow? Greetings from Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia. Great to have you on here. Very cool to see people there in Europe reaching out and have staying up late or early, however it is for you. Actually, one of my best friends growing up was from the Czech Republic, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I think that there's going to be something where the U.S. gets a portion of the escrow. There's definitely pre-allocated contracts. The Ripple met with the Fed in 2014. They've had conversations ongoing with the Treasury for ROUSD and other purposes. Obviously, they've been meeting with Trump. There's a lot of things that would lead you to believe that XRP is going to be incorporated in the stockpile by the U.S. government, and a portion of the escrow might be involved in that capacity. Swift, there was a tweet from Watcher Guru the other day that talked about negotiations between Ripple and Swift were being finalized for a portion of the escrow to provide liquidity for cross-border transactions. I think a lot of this stuff has been buttoned up for a long time, even since 2020, and like the last little bit of it was kind of worked out in the lawsuit where JP Morgan and other people could get their piece to be able to participate and be interoperable with the XRPL. We've seen Axelar come online that allows for interoperability between Onyx and the EVM sidechain. I think that needed to be in place for them to feel comfortable moving forward and give it the green light, since Ripple wouldn't sell JP Morgan the escrow when they tried to come to the office and buy it. Ripple's direct sales onto the market each month from the distribution from the escrow definitely do hold price stability for XRP. It's a treasury mechanism that does that. And over the long term, once it's adopted, it will probably do the same thing. They will release whatever they need to on the market to hold price stability over the next 30 days, because that's what XRP needs to be, a high stable price to be able to facilitate its use case. There have been moments or times when XRP moves explosively to the upside. They're not going to be sending payments over the network during that period. And I think you're going to see that again here in short order as we see some of the domino theory play out. So, yeah, I do think that the U.S. government will get their piece, and we'll get to see, what real adoption looks like as that transpires. Atlantic Living says, do you agree with Robbie Minchnick's comment that private blockchains are not going to be the winners in the space? I think you need both. Private permissioned ecosystems for private transactions between trusted counterparties. It's a really effective way to do business and commerce and scale things for different transactions. If you can operate in like Corda, which is a private permissioned ecosystem that's interoperable with the XRP mainnet to be able to settle transactions between siloed ecosystems. I think you need both at scale for people to feel comfortable adopting this technology. This person's asked, do you think XRP can go to 5,000? I think XRP will be $10,000 in 2026, 2027. So yeah, absolutely, it can go to 5,000. So yeah, I don't know. Robbie's a smart guy. There are private instances of the XRPL and side chains. There are private instances of Hedera. Polymath also allows for private permissioned ecosystems that are interoperable with the mainnet, which is a public ledger. So that's, those are three of them that are basically looking to be able to tokenize real world assets and securities. As an example, okay, so like Stanley Morgan has a Series A and B marketplace for their private wealth clients. The transactions that they're using in that ecosystem to be able to provide, that value for their clients, they're not going to want on a public ledger. They're going to want a private instance that interacts with, public ledger for secondary markets and liquidity. But that privatized ecosystem will be a trusted, permissioned environment, and people will be able to transact and participate there. And then again, source liquidity from secondaries. So I think that, again, to my point earlier, you need both in order to have the adoption at scale that people want. Thank you for the super chat. Daughter of God. Very nice. I like the name. They say, hi, Jake. So blessed to have found you. Great to have you here. And thank you for the question and super chat. So glad to be here. You're awesome. Appreciate that. I believe XRP will go to 10K and higher. Yeah, we just talked about that from the question over here on TikTok. How high do you think XLM and HBAR will go and why? Thank you. God bless. XLM, I think, is going to cap out around $1,000. And I've said this frequently almost the whole time that I've been, and I could be wrong, maybe it goes higher than that, but my thought or my reasoning for that is the decimal places. In order to be able to transact micro payments, you need 4 decimal places to the right of the decimal. And there are 7 decimal places for XLM. And so therefore you'd have, the highest value that I think it could possibly go if it's facilitating those use cases would be $999.9999, right? And that's basically $1,000, right? So that's kind of my thought process around that, and that's still significant. I mean, that's a lot of upside from where it currently sits today. And then HBAR is interesting. HBAR, I think, is going to get all of the Web3 dApps. I think that Swift is going to use it for some pieces of it, not settlement. It could be used domestically for settlement, so not international remittance, where you were settling, like dollar-to-dollar transactions. HBAR might be used in that capacity if both counterparties are okay with the same stable coin that it's being settled in. So let's say it's like Circle, and both parties trust that counterparty and they want USDC. You could probably move that over HBAR or XLM, Hyperledger. But if the counterparties that are transacting want something different on either side of the transaction than the value that they're paying with, then you're going to need a DEX or an intermediary asset to be able to swap those. HBAR doesn't have a DEX built in. It doesn't have a liquidity sourcing tool. It's great for security and its scalable transactions and messaging, smart contract capability. and consensus. There's a bunch of things about HBAR that work well. But again, the fees are fixed as a dollar denominated amount. So as it scales, HBAR, probably something similar to XLM, maybe $1,000 a piece is a realistic long-term, over the next 5 to 10 year price appreciation on HBAR. And I would love to be wrong. I would love to see it go higher than that. HBAR is my number 2 out of everything. It's probably, aside from XRP, what I am most bullish on as far as the adoption and the use case of it. So, yeah, those would be my 2 guesses. Around $1,000 a piece for both of those assets. We've got Dallas Buzz. Very cool. Thank you for the super chat. They say, will sidechains and subnets usage on the XRPL still reflect its overall token price? Also, will any usage of XRP token add value to the actual token? Excuse me. So, issued assets on the network don't necessarily bring value to the token. It is volume and the supply and demand dynamic for use and settlement, volume buying and selling of the token that causes the price appreciation. That's the mechanism. So when you see volume go up on the XRPL, that's when you see price appreciation happen for the asset. So issued assets are going to be great, real world tokenized assets, all that stuff. But the price of XRP is not really going to move much until you're having like Swift settle transactions over the network. The daily volume for Swift is $5 trillion in settlement. The back end of the stock market is $6.5 trillion in settlement. The FX market is about the same, something like $6 trillion in settlement. And these are daily volumes, right? And so if you had all of that volume moving over the XRPL to be able to settle that, TPS, to your point, is 1,500. That's kind of the highest throughput that the XRPL, the mainnet, can have. You need subnets and sidechains to scale to an infinite amount of transactions, or to be able to even get to the point where MasterCard or Visa would use it. They need 30,000 plus TPS because they have a ton of transactions on a daily basis. So when I asked Matt Hamilton about this, to your point here, you mentioned a subnet. He said that there needs to be an implicit or explicit subnet on the XRPL that would allow it to scale to infinite amount of transactions. And I mentioned Cobalt. He said Cobalt is no longer, being developed. But I think that, Ripple is potentially working on a subnet. And again, the side chains, the TPS on the side chain is also only 1,500. So to scale to 30,000 transactions, you need like 20 side chains plus the mainnet. And then you'd have to have validators, and there's a lot of things that would be required in order to do it through the side chains, the subnets, and the payment channels on the XRPL are what's going to allow it to be able to scale. And it would be reflected in the price of the token if that value is moving over that, because those transactions would be batched and then settled over the mainnet as needed through the TPS that's available there and the liquidity that's inside of XRP. We have Texas Honey Badger. Very cool. They say, evening, Jake, new Carbon One member. Awesome. Glad to have you there in the mastermind with us. And this organization is life-changing with a great bunch of like-minded people. Yeah, it's super cool. I never imagined that. Well, I mean, I kind of did. When you have intentions when you start something, but it's really cool to see it come to fruition. The culture that has been built there in the mastermind is just incredible. Everybody wants to help everybody. Everybody has aligned goals, and they're like-minded, God-fearing, good people. And they all have similar mindset around, there's not a whole lot of people that I met in the XRP community or in our community that are gluttonous. They don't want more than they need. And anything more than they need, they want to help other people with. They're very giving, charitable would probably be the best word to describe a lot of the people there in the community. And again, just super blessed to be a part of that. And glad to have you there as a member. If it's something that you guys are interested in, if you'd like to be part of a cool community of almost 1,500 people that have aligned interest and hold a lot of XRP and utility-driven assets, you can just go to Digital Wealth Partner. Sorry, actually, it's beyondbroke.com, not Digital Wealth Partners. I'm so used to saying that. Beyondbroke.com. And you can use the code BeyondBroke, just like it's spelled there, all capitalized with the number 1 and then MO, like Mary, Oscar, or month. They get you a free month there in the Mastermind. Come check it out. If you don't like it for whatever reason, you can always cancel. There's, literally no risk within the first 30 days if you decide like it's not for me, Discord's too hard, for whatever reason, I can't afford it, but I will say this: on the other side of price appreciation, which I feel like is going to happen very soon, very, very soon, with the reverse carry trade unwinding, Japan going to raise interest rates, oil, tether, stablecoin regulation. That there's a lot of things that I've put out and talked about literally for 1 year now. Almost 1 year ago, I put out the domino theory. All of that's going to transpire. And on the other side of a $10 XRP, we're going to lock the Mastermind down. Anybody that's in now, you are locked in at the current prices for all the tiers. So if you do want to move up post price appreciation to Carbon 2 or Carbon 3, you're more than welcome to do that. But at the current time, the people that are there are the ones we're going to take care of. We provide exclusive opportunities to people there in the group for many things, including investment in, specific fintech companies that you may or may not know. And if you're not accredited, we have ways that those people can participate because of the ways that we've structured the community and the information we provide there. So just a lot of really good resources there in the group, a lot of really good people, and a lot of really good features. And we're going to continue to build out value. But on the other side, we are going to raise prices 10x what they currently sit at today for anybody that wants in post price appreciation. And the vetting process will be extremely stringent. We're going to be very protective of the community post price appreciation. But for now, again, you can get in free month, 30 days, check it out. Beyondbroke.com and just use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized with the number 1 and then MO, get you a free month there in the group. What is carbon? It's just the name of the levels. Like some people have like bronze, silver, gold. We decided to do social, carbon 1 and carbon 2 is the name of the levels there in the BeyondBroke Mastermind. Scrolling on down, we got here's if you want to read through all of this. There's the code though. BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO gets you a free month there in Carbon 1 or social, whichever you'd like. And there is the link for the website. Shade Spot, thank you for the super chat. They say, "G'day from Australia, Jake. G'day, mate. You're a legend." Appreciate that, man. Crazy to me that all the Aussies are awesome. Maybe it's because I'm from Texas, but I get along really well with people from Australia. He said, "If we join Carbon 1 now, when XRP appreciates, then we can switch to Carbon 2. Yes, sir. And you're locked in at the current prices. We will pay much higher membership rate or keep the current prices for early adopters." You get to keep the same rates. Like that's the whole point. I take care of people that take care of us, and that community. And we want to make sure that we're providing, again, as much value as we possibly can for the price point. And as things appreciate, we'll continue to build out things. We definitely have more in real life events than any other community in the XRPL or the XRP community, probably more so than in any other mastermind or community that I've seen out there. We have more in-person events than any of them. Try to do one a quarter, either here in Dallas, and we have some others across the U.S. We try to do at least one event or every 6 months for Carbon 2 exclusively. Try to put those together, and it's kid friendly, family friendly. We have a lot of people show up with their family and take it on vacation, and then they can do the write off because it's part of a community event to learn and get educated on specific things. And we'll continue to do really cool locations, especially post-price appreciation. We'll look at Malta. We'll look at Portugal. We'll look at international stuff in Dubai and Caymans, Belize. All those places we're going to be looking to host events and do cool things. Go out and race some supercars in Dubai is one of the things on the list. So Anyway, if you want to be part of that community and have access to those events and then all the exclusive deals that we're going to run in there and have run in there already, we just recently made an investment in a quantum technology company. For those that are in Carbon 2, they got access to that in the seed round. I'm highly confident that that company will likely be acquired at a multi-billion-dollar valuation, and it should be somewhere around a 25 or 50x return for the people that participated on that deal. We'll see. Nothing's ever guaranteed, but based on the Series A and how that's coming along, it should do pretty well. Anyway, so we'll continue to bring those opportunities to the group. We get them all the time. I have tons of deal flow that we'll continue to bring to the group. We get KJ. They say, can you talk about the market cap multiplier for XRP and how it can help XRP reach higher prices? Yeah, so Zach has put this out, and again, it comes back to supply and demand. Okay, so there's only 50 billion XRP, 52 billion XRP available, but really not all that's even available. When I talked to Simon, who's the CEO and president of Uphold, a couple years ago, and he asked me, how much XRP I thought was available on exchanges and in retail's hands, and I told him somewhere between 5 and 6 billion, maybe 5 or 6% of the supply. And he said, yeah, that's about right. And I, as the head of Uphold and the partner for ODL and all the other stuff that they do with Ripple, I would think that he probably knows. So with that, you can think about there's only maybe 3 billion at any given time available for purchase. I think it's even less than that at this point. I think it's around 1 billion XRP that's available left on exchanges for purchase, even through OTC desks and other stuff. And so I would that's how you can think of it. So it's kind of like a 50 to 1. And that's how Zach talks about it. As it gets bought up and that billion gets bought up, if $1 billion moved into XRP for purchasing and drove the price up, you would see kind of a 50x because the total supply that's available versus the total amount that's like really available. So like supply versus actual available supply, that's kind of how you get that multiplier effect. So, if it's 1 billion that's available and there's 50 billion total, it kind of be like a 50x on the multiplier. And he talked about, there's points where it's like 100x or 200x. I'd like to see how he worked out the math on that. Because to me, it seems like a 50x makes sense based on total supply versus available supply on the exchanges. And maybe it's total supply, it was 100 billion and there's only 1 billion available. And that's how he gets to the 100x. But that would be the way it would math in my mind. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. We got Off the Grid Hero. He says, we are getting close to the domino theory. Yes, we are. Very soon. He says, run up in XRP from now to May, maybe 2026. Yeah, I think that we could see some volatility here this week. I'm normally not the astrology guy, but you do have TCBR supposedly going to go off this week. That's been referenced by some of the stuff that's gone on with the Twitter accounts there. So, I don't know. Take it with a grain of salt, but if there is anything to the riddles and all that stuff, probably on point if that does go live Thursday this week. Because again, you've got the 2-year yield there in Japan starting to jump. We saw that, move significantly higher just in the last 24 hours. Same thing for the 10-year yield. Japan is going to have to raise interest rates, especially if there's some type of catalyst with oil in the Middle East or conflict or anything else there. It's going to exacerbate the inflation that they're going to be feeling in their economy, and they're going to have to move and launch their CBDC, likely on the XRPL, to be able to offset some of the things there and create efficiencies and catapult their economy and the Nikkei higher. And when they do, there's going to be a ton of treasuries that get dumped onto the market, U.S. treasuries. You'll get stablecoin regulation, which will have implications for Tether and Bitcoin. And then we'll get the launch of the ETFs now that the case is settled for Ripple and XRP. And I think you'll see liquidity move in a tsunami from institutions, retail, exchanges, and from the Bitcoin ETFs into the XRP ETFs, purchasing And the other thing, like the shares on the ETFs that have been issued or brought for approval to the SEC, they're not like a 1-to-1. Like it's not like 1 XRP per share. It's like 50, 20, 100, 200, 500 XRP per share of these ETFs. And so when they're buying that off the open market, each share that's purchased is going to drive a huge amount of purchasing for XRP. And that's what I think is really going to exacerbate the price rise. And again, supply and demand, or the supply shock that I see coming. Peter, thank you so much for the super chat, brother. He says, hi, Jake. Hoping you can bring some clarity to how countries are moving money through XRP. If there are 100 billion XRP available, then how can companies move trillions of dollars using XRP? Are they purchasing XRP to move the money? So again, this is volume, right? So let's say you had an issued asset, ROUSD, and you wanted to swap it for another stable coin issued on the network. Right now, to move through XRP, you'd need ODL, you need Uphold, because Uphold does a fiat to digital currency transfer for XRP, sends it to the counterparty, and then they swap it back into fiat and then send that to the counterparty's bank. Thank you, babe. My wonderful wife. She's a nice lady. So that's how they're moving. They're going to move trillions. They're really not moving trillions right now. ODL, Ripple currently has 4.8 billion XRP, so that's around $10 billion that they're able to facilitate moving capital with. So if you wanted to settle into a inflationary currency, that's the time that people are using this right now. So if you wanted to send money to Turkey in the Turkish lira, and settle that way, and you didn't want to hold the Turkish lira because it's inflating away, they've removed short selling on their stock market. We'll see what happens there in Turkey, but those are the use cases where XRP is currently being used today through ODL in partnership with Uphold. And the other way that they do it is they lend the XRP out, but it's really just like a liquidity. So they lend the XRP, Uphold exchanges that for fiat, they lend it to the bank uses that money however they're going to use it for 7 days. They send it back to Uphold with the interest, they swap it back for XRP, and then they send it back to Ripple. At least that was the way it was explained to me in the conversation a couple hours after Simon inked that deal with Ripple. So they're not moving trillions through the XRPL yet, but as price appreciates on XRP, there'll be enough liquidity in XRP to be able to facilitate those transactions. And different counterparties are holding XRP will start utilizing it to be able to settle those payments over the network between siloed institutions. And that's why they call it the Internet of Value. Right now, we kind of have the intranet of value. So back in the day, and I say back in the day, like I was super young when this was going on. But imagine, you had an AOL email and I had a Yahoo email. There was a point where I could not send you an email because the internet, the email protocol did not exist for interoperability between email addresses. It would be like today, I have Cash App and you have Venmo. Like I can't send my money from Cash App to you because you're not using the same application as me. There's a siloed ecosystem where that money moves. The Internet of Value will allow parties that are using different applications and different networks to send money to a counterparty using some other application or network. And that's the whole point, right? And there's a decentralized exchange and a routing mechanism. And again, that's why XRP provides so much value in this use case. And it will get the trillions, but it doesn't currently have those today. So yeah, great question. We get another super chat from Shade Spot. They say, novel scenario. If you had 100K to invest, but you're not allowed to buy XRP, sad, I know. What would you buy? And how might you split it? Also, is it worth having a small bag of Flare? Cheers, mate. I can't buy XRP. I would probably invest in Ripple. If I couldn't buy XRP directly, I would buy something that was going to benefit substantially by the appreciation of XRP. And again, that's, why I've built the business that I have. I've literally built it around the anticipation of XRP's price appreciation. We work, with people to custody their XRP and provide returns and liquidity against it. We've built financial products specific for XRP to be able to provide value to people that are holding large amount of XRP. I've literally bet it all on XRP's appreciation. So if I had 100K, I would invest it in my business, which I do pretty frequently, or Ripple or something else that's kind of a derivative of XRP if I couldn't directly buy XRP. Because I think that's going to be the highest ROI of basically anything in my lifetime, or anybody else that's watching this lifetime. And you asked about Flare. I won't skip over that. I think Flare is going to be around. I think it's going to be used. I think the snapshot that was taken in 2020 on December 12th would have primarily been investment banks or institutions or enterprises that were holding XRP that probably got a pretty significant allocation of Flare and have continued to stake it and buy it as the price has dropped over the last 2 years since it was released. And I think at some point, like Spark is going to have a pretty substantial value. If you're going to lock up XRP with Spark, and you're going to have to post 2.5 times the collateral to be able to mint FXRP, Spark's going to have to be worth a lot of money to be able to post that much collateral to be able to mint the FXRP. So I think, that's probably a significantly undervalued asset at this time. And it's, again, not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I employ financial advisors at Digital Wealth Partners if you want financial advice, and they can tell you to buy more XRP and buy more Flare, but I can't. Alfredo says, "Hola, what's up, man? How feasible is Jimmy Valley's $500 billion restitution to XRP holders coming to fruition?" This is a really good question, and I was wondering if somebody was going to ask me this tonight. So I know Jimmy personally, good guy, previous securities attorney, very intelligent individual. I was part of the Red Folder Committee back in the day that did the valuations on XRP, and I think he has a really good case, to be honest with you, against the U.S. government and the SEC for the litigation that was brought against Ripple and the damages that are potentially owed to XRP holders at the time. I don't know how they're going to work that out. So if you took, we did the math on this earlier today. If you took $500 billion and you distributed that evenly across the people that were holding XRP at the time, I was there. I was looking at the rich list. I know how many wallets there were. There were 2.7 million wallets at the time of the snapshot for Flare, which was previous to the case being dropped, 9 days later. Or not dropped, but started in 2020 on December 21st. So I think it's very feasible. I don't think Jimmy is very persistent. That's the other thing I will say about Jimmy is he does not give up. He will continue fighting. He has the capital to do it. Jimmy has a family office himself. And so I wouldn't bet against Jimmy. And I think there's definitely damages. There's a lot of people that sold off their XRP that had large amounts, previous to the lawsuit. They sold because of the lawsuit. And it's impeded the adoption of XRP in a lot of the use cases and what he put together for the valuation models. And I think we're still going to see those valuations for XRP, but there's definitely been damages, right? Like there's a lot of people that don't have the amount of XRP that they had. And I think that's kind of what the snapshot was for, to be honest with you. I think they wanted to take it, just a little bit before the case so that they could see who was holding how much back in the day. And be able to actually pay that restitution for people. I think that's part of Flare's deal. And I think Jimmy knows that. So they would be able to provide that data to Jimmy and all of the wallet addresses that existed at that time during the snapshot that was taken that would then be owed the restitution at the time of distribution if he does win that lawsuit. So really good question. Excited for that. We will see how it works out. And, I support Jimmy in that endeavor. We have another one from Textured Puma. Thank you for the super chat. They say, "Hey Jake, I'm I'm put about 12 cryptos in my LLC. I then sold / wrapped some to buy more XRP. What do I do to update the agreement? You don't have to. So because this is on, a blockchain and public ledger, those transactions and the wallet events that you can see serve as the written actions for what you've done. And as long as the XRP has made its way to the wallet associated with the LLC, you're fine. You actually don't need to amend anything because it's the wallet address that's now owned by the LLC, and that's how you moved it in there. And again, however much XRP is in there, those transactions are all written actions or consents for the LLC because that LLC owns that wallet. So if you have, swapped things around or done things with the assets that you moved in there, all of that's on a blockchain, on an accounting, a public ledger, and would be visible by an accountant or anybody else. So you're actually good. And you can continue to purchase in your personal account as long as it moves to the wallet associated with the LLC. Again, perfectly fine for written consent or written action to be able to register that and keep the accounting straight. It's a good question, though, because a lot of people, I'm sure, have done something similar and think about that. Let's see here. People with these awesome super chats. Thank you so much, Dawn. Hi, Jake. I have a question. Filling out the LLC docs. Is a little hand holding included in your pricing? It is. Jonathan is who primarily works with people to be able to establish their LLC. If you do need to chat with him, he will make some time. He will provide you a bunch of context and information through email. But if you do need a little hand holding, we definitely do that, and happy to walk you through that documentation if it's necessary. Again, just reach out via email, respond back to him from the email address that you received the documentation from, and he should be able to help you. And just let me know, how that goes. Again, thank you for the super chat and support and working with us on the LLC, and hopefully we'll get to work with you on a lot of other stuff as well. We got Thillionaire H, not trillionaire, but Thillionaire. Thanks for your time. Absolutely. I enjoy doing these every Monday and Wednesday. You guys ask fantastic questions. I get a lot of fulfillment from doing this. So I appreciate you guys taking out the time in your busy schedule to watch me and ask great questions. He said, friends retiring early, doesn't need 457 right away. Can it be moved to a Roth IRA? And if so, what are the possible tax implications? A 457 account is something that I'm not as familiar with. So just anytime I'm not sure on something, I'm going to tell you guys. I don't know. Anything that I am positive on, I'm happy to have that discussion. I would need to go back and do some research on a 457 retirement account. If it's a pension plan or if it's a teacher retirement or it's a structured retirement plan of some kind. I don't know what their ability to move that to an IRA is or a Roth IRA. I know a 401k, you have to leave your previous employer. And then at that point, you can migrate that to a self-directed IRA or a Roth IRA. You can do a backdoor IRA or backdoor Roth IRA. There's a bunch of ways to do it. But if he is retiring, just as a guess, again, I would have to do research on the 457 specifically. But as a guess, I would think that they would be able to migrate to an IRA. If you did a Roth, you'd have to pay the taxes in order to, fund a Roth, a backdoor Roth. But you could do it. If they're retiring and leaving that employer, they should be capable. And there shouldn't be any tax implications unless it's the Roth, and then they will have to pay the tax on the total amount as it sits, as when they put it in there, and then it'll grow tax-free inside the Roth. It's a good question. Scrolling on down here. Thank you, Brandon G, for the super chat. Let me see if hopefully I don't miss your question here. It always kicks me back up to the top of the chat for whatever reason. We got a couple more. Here he is, Brandon G. He says, "Hey Jake, Ripple's investment in Blockstream Green looks strategic. Any thoughts on possible partnership with XRP and Ondo?" Yeah. Tokenized treasuries, I think, will end up being settled through the XRPL. I think that XRP will be a tier 1 asset alongside U.S. treasuries and gold, designated by the BIS. And I think that Ondo and its strategic partnership with BlackRock and Securitize and all the other ones out there, we've been to a lot of RWA stuff over the last year. At Consensus, they spoke. Ondo did. Just the tokenized treasury component's a big deal. I think their token will do well, and I do think that XRP would be interoperable with that to be able to settle tokenized treasuries inside of a tokenized stock market. So as an example, so people may be like, well, why would you need to do that? You could use Ondo. You could. You're going to lock Ondo up when you mint the tokenized treasuries on that chain. But let's say you wanted to swap the tokenized treasuries for tokenized stocks. And Corda ends up being the back end for the tokenized stock market through Project Ion for back end settlement of the stock market. You also got Swift partnering with Chainlink and Hedera to be able to facilitate the registration and settlement, or not settlement, but information transfer from price feeds and tokenized stocks, registering those transactions on chain to be able to prove them and make them immutable. But you'd still need XRP to be able to settle that. And we got a video coming out about that here later this week, how Chainlink, HBAR, and XRP could be used in tandem for Swift adoption and to settle those transactions for international cross-border payments, and securities transactions and some other things as well. Because there's so many people that think it's just going to be one chain that does all of it. It's not going to be, unless it's Corda, and then they're still going to settle through XRP, which again we talk about in that video. So stay tuned for that here on the channel. If you haven't yet, and I don't say this enough on the lives, please like, subscribe. We got like 880 people here on YouTube watching. Please like, subscribe if you're getting value from this, or share it with somebody else. It does help the channel grow, and it does help the algorithm. But there will be a video here later this week on that, which will be pretty interesting for most people, I think. But anyway, back to the question at hand. I do think that there will be a potential interoperability or partnership between Ripple, XRP, Ondo, and who they're working with to tokenize treasuries. Another super chat. Thank you guys so much. He says, it's Mr. 2U. Thank you, Jake, for all that you do. See you in Dallas next month. Yeah, hey, all right. It'll be good to see you here for the family office event. I have XRP and Coinbase and Kraken, so no wallet. How do I transfer to my DWP account? It's a great question. So you would establish an LLC. You would come on board. We would create you an account there at DWP, which you would then register or list as your capital contribution wallet in your operating agreement, and then be able to transfer the assets from Coinbase and Kraken over to the account there and fund that at DWP at Anchorage. And that would serve as your capital contribution for the equity in your LLC. So you can do it that way. You don't have to move it to a cold wallet first, even though that is kind of ideal, especially for risks. Coinbase and Kraken, I don't think either one of those are going to go anywhere. Little birdie, I don't know if I should say this publicly. It has to do with Kraken, and it has to do with being public in a certain time frame. But we talk about that in the Mastermind. So if you join the Mastermind, you would know in what time frame Kraken's going to go public. Anyway, exciting times. And then also Coinbase is a publicly traded company. So I don't think either one of those are going anywhere. So it's probably safe to hold your assets on there. But again, decent is what we recommend. If you can't move your assets into institutional custody because you don't quite have enough, or maybe you're not ready for that, decent wallet is, and I think we have a link maybe in the bio here. There's definitely a video on our channel that talks about it. So if you do want a cold wallet, I would go check out Decent. But yeah, you can definitely move it into custody off of those exchanges. You would set up the LLC, and we would just list the Anchorage wallet as the initial contribution for the business. Thank you again. It's a good question. We've had other people ask it, so you're not alone. Amp, thank you for the super chat. 10 euros, very cool. Or pounds, 10 pounds. Hey, better than $1. That's like 12 or 13 bucks. Thank you. He says, hey, Jake, sorry for an uneducated question. There's no such thing as a stupid question. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask. So, I learned from just holding XRP or any other ISO coins at an account at your company, or do you have to have financial advisors that help with that? So we want to make it like, I was talking to my CIO about this today. I want to marry DeFi and TradFi. Okay, there's a lot of benefits that you get from working with an advisor, and the products that we offer and all the things that have to do with that. However, a lot of people that are Web3 native or Web3 native, you don't necessarily need somebody else. You like DeFi, you like having the access to liquidity, but there are some downfalls there. Most of the time when you're using DeFi, you are giving up something about your assets. Sometimes it's the voting power. Sometimes it's the actual asset itself. You have to stake it somewhere and somebody else holds it. There's counterparty risk. We've seen so many people get rugged and like lose their money. It's not insured. It's not an institutional custody. Your spouse and your beneficiaries aren't on there. There's no protections. You're not signing documentation that this is a securities offering. So if there is a lawsuit or loss, you have recourse. You have none of that with DeFi. There's just a lot of things that you give up for the liquidity and access and quickness that DeFi provides. So again, we want to marry that. So I was talking to my CIO like about liquidity provisions and different things that we can offer clients. We want to make it fairly, user friendly for people to onboard into things. But again, you will have an advisor that you can or cannot use depending on what you want, for what we provide with Digital Wealth Partners. You will be assigned an advisor. But again, they set up a call with you on a quarterly basis. You can be as intimately involved in how your assets are managed as you want. And at the end of the day, we do exactly what you say to do with your assets. You are in control. We are just a countersigner and a counterparty to the assets and the services or products that we're providing. So it's basically like, hey, Amp, we have all these new products that we're bringing on this quarter. We have these other products that we currently have. We have the ability to borrow against your XRP. What are your long-term goals? And they'll walk through that. How much money would you like to make each month? Walk through that. What's your risk tolerance and time horizon? Walk through that. Okay, cool. Based on that, this is what we would suggest. Maybe a 20% allocation to this, 70% allocation to this, and then you borrow against 10% for liquidity. You're able to service that debt with a portion of that. You're still able to make your income needs. We're able to offset some of the taxes because you're paying some of that debt down, and you get all of that money tax-free from the 10% you borrowed against. And that's going to help you accomplish your financial goals for the next 6 to 12 months, right? It's good to have somebody that's like educated in all that stuff and can help walk you through it. But at the end of the day, if you don't like that for whatever reason, you say, well, what if I do 50% here and 20% here and I borrow against 30% of it? Okay, you can do it that way too. We're just going to be there to provide the understanding of how the products and services work that we provide and give some guidance. But at the end of the day, you're the one making the financial decisions, and we're just helping you do that with the financial advice that we're providing. So we can do, again, we can be as involved or uninvolved as you want us to be. Let's see here. Textured Puma again. Thank you for the super chat. They say, do you think we will see, sorry, I got to fix the TikTok. If it's on for an hour and I don't touch the screen, it goes wild. Do you think we'll see significant price appreciation before the ETFs are approved? No. Sure don't. Do you think they would want average investors along for the ride? David Schwartz has already said, so what if a few people get rich? Okay. I did the math the other day. So I was talking with my COO. We were going back and forth, and she was asking, what do you think the total addressable market is for crypto millionaires? And I was like, that's a really good question. So I did the math on just XRP. So right now, to have a wallet that holds $1 million worth of XRP, you'd be in the top 7,000 wallets. Okay. We know some people, like this other gentleman that just mentioned on here, he holds his stuff on exchanges, and maybe he has $1 million worth of XRP. So, and then there's other people that have multiple wallets, and they haven't siloed their risk. They have like 5-6 wallets with a couple $100,000 worth in each. So, or maybe a couple million in each. Who knows? So at the end of the day, I think there's somewhere around 10,000 people currently that are an XRP millionaire, that have at least $1 million in XRP at a current market cap of 140 billion. So for me, I'm like, all right, if there's roughly 10,000 people globally that are XRP millionaires at this point, we'll divide the market cap, or we'll divide that amount by the market cap, and that gives you a percentage. And then we're going to multiply that amount by the total crypto market cap, which is 2.8 billion, 2.8 trillion is the current market cap of crypto. So we have roughly 200,000 people that are crypto millionaires of some kind. Most of that's going to be in Bitcoin because it has the most market cap as it currently sits. I think XRP will be the largest market cap by far in the very near future. But at the current time, that's where it sits. So there's really not even that many people that are going to get like really, really rich off of this. And as the ETFs go up, it's mainly just going to be the institutions that make money on the ETFs. There's going to be people that pile in, as those are announced. But I think the price is going to move substantially before that, just because they're going to have to back them. And again, like I talked about before, one share of these ETFs is 20, 50, 100, 200, 500 XRP, depending on which ETF it is. So that's a lot of XRP that needs to be purchased to back the shares, because it's a spot ETF for all of them. All 17 of them, probably going to be 20 or 22 total ETFs for XRP, is what I'm thinking. So that's a lot of people buying a lot of XRP all at one time to be able to fund these. And I think that's what's going to drive the price up. I think there's going to be a price shock when that happens. It could also be exchanges. So if Tether goes illiquid, it gets sanctioned. And we've already seen a few exchanges and all of European exchanges delist Tether to be able to mitigate that risk. But if we saw, a liquidity crisis across all the exchanges because Tether is sanctioned and those accounts are frozen, that's when you get the Shane Ellis theory that plays out, where the exchanges start buying up the XRP to drive the price up to be able to provide liquidity for the back-end settlement of their transactions using the DEX. So you could have all of these catalysts play out all at one time also. Again, and then once the price is high enough, you could see SWIFT adopt it. You could see it back-end settlement of the stock market. You could see the FX market. There's tons of use cases for XRP to be able to settle transactions globally if the price is high enough to be able to provide liquidity and for the volume of transactions that are being settled between counterparties. So anyway, to answer your question specifically, no, I don't think you're going to see the price appreciation until the ETFs are launched. And I think that is the mechanism by which they will drive the price to crazy high levels to be able to save the financial system when there is a global credit call. Let's see here. We have a couple more super chats. We got SAE. They say, hey, Jake, how bullish are you on XDC and SHX? I'm pretty bullish on XDC. I think somewhere between $3 and $5 is realistic this cycle. If they get the implementation for trade finance, could it be higher than that? Sure. I made a lot of money on XDC when it was 0.03 of a penny. I bought into it when you couldn't even get it anywhere. You had to buy ETH and swap it to a weird, obscure cold wallet and then exchange it for XDC when it was XDCE. So I've already made my money on it. Excuse me. I'm trying to drink the tea to help with that, but it's not going that well. Stronghold, I don't know. I'd love to be wrong on Stronghold. I'll say that. I don't think it's going to go to the prices people want it to. To get to the prices that people want it to, you'd have to see the same level of adoption for merchant services or payment processing as Stripe. they're not going to compete with Stripe. The reason I know they're not going to compete with Stripe is I've tried to call them and use their service and nobody got back to me. So their sales department is slacking. And to get as much adoption as Stripe, or another large payment processor, like you need to be following up with leads. You need to be able to like cultivate relationships. You need to be able to get market penetration. They're not doing that. Their best opportunity for that is if they get acquired by a Stripe or by another large payment processor like PayPal. I don't anticipate that that's going to happen. Stripe will issue their own stablecoin or rewards program to be able to participate in their ecosystem. Same thing for PayPal. They will do the same thing. They don't need SHX. Stronghold, I think, is like the beta for that application. Could it still make a bunch of money? Sure, for sure. 10x, 20x, 30x return. Absolutely. But to get to the prices that I think a lot of people are touting for that token, not overly enthusiastic about that, because again, the volume that they'd have to be moving is somewhere around 2% of global transactions for merchant services or payment processing. They're not going to get there. So anyway, super bullish on XDC. Those are kind of the price predictions that I have for either one. And again, not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Please always speak with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. If you would like a financial advisor, you can reach out to Digital Wealth Partners and they will advise you on crypto and the investments there. We've got Kieferbot. They say, is XRP popular in Europe and Asia as it is in America? Southeast Asia loves XRP. It is unreal. The love for XRP in Southeast Asia. Same thing in Japan and all across Asia. I don't know that Europe has the same enthusiasm that like South Korea and some of those other nations in Southeast Asia do. But we have a lot of people from the UK reach out. We have a lot of people across Europe in the Mastermind. We have people globally in the Mastermind, which is the other cool thing, right? So if you want to be part of a community and understand international laws and how that's going to be applicable to you, we have different channels based on which jurisdiction you reside in. This person's in Dubai. Very cool. Been in Dubai multiple times. Value-added tax 6%. It's a great jurisdiction to set yourself up in. Singapore is another great spot. Switzerland, Nevis, Portugal. There are strategic places globally. British Virgin Islands, the Caymans. Here if you're in the U.S., Wyoming, South Dakota are a couple good places to be able to establish an entity or a trust. So anyway, we have tons of people in the Mastermind from across both of those areas, Japan, Southeast Asia, Europe, the broader EU, UK, Australia, Canada, South America. If you want to be part of the Mastermind and check that out and, be a part of that community with all of those wonderful people, you can use the code Beyond Broke, all capitalized, and then the number 1, and then MO gets you a free month there in the group. So again, beyondbroke.com. It's Beyond Broke at the checkout for Carbon One or Social, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you a free month there in the group to check it out. And again, if you're international, I think you're still going to get a lot of value from the group. We do have a lot of discussions about American-based stuff because, again, that's the majority of our business and what we do. But we do try to curate things for international participants as well. Wayne, he says, thank you for the super chat, Wayne. He says, how long before ETFs go online? How much inflows is expected? And how much XRP should move per billion of inflows? So again, it goes back to the market cap multiplier. If we saw $1 billion worth of inflows into XRP, I think you'd see a 50x in the market cap, which would be wild. You would see, 140 billion would go to 5 trillion very quickly if we saw $1 billion in inflows into XRP being purchased off the exchanges. And I think you're going to get that. I think you're going to see way more than just $1 billion worth of inflows buying up XRP for a lot of the reasons I've already mentioned. The spot ETFs are backed by multiple XRP, so it's not just a one-to-one. And You're going to have all of these ETFs approved at the same time and huge amounts of inflows moving in. So I don't know what the price of some of the shares in these ETFs are going to be, but they're going to be substantial. If you're buying 20, 50, 100, 200, 500 XRP, and it goes to, $1,000 a piece or more. If it's the 500, I don't know if there's 500 or not, but let's just say it's 100 XRP per share at $1,000 a piece. That's $10,000 a year. Over there, more than that, $100,000 per share at 100 XRP a piece at $1,000 a piece for XRP. Maybe 6 figures. Wow. They're probably going to have to figure out how to reduce that on the other side of it. I think, people might not anticipate the price rising as substantially as I do, but I do think that that's going to be the catalyst for it. And I do think you're going to see a tsunami of cash get thrown into XRP and a ton of liquidity migrate, a rollover from the Bitcoin ETFs and other areas in the market into the XRP ETFs all at once when they are launched. Again, like I talked about at the beginning of this broadcast and this live, there's just so many things set up for the perfect storm to happen for XRP price appreciation. Let's see here. See if I got any other super chats. Then we'll hop over here to TikTok and run down a few questions. Sorry if I've been neglecting you guys. This person says, Rams, do you ever consider discussing where does the money from the escrow release sale go? Sold onto exchanges. That's where it goes. And it is used to suppress the price. I don't make any qualms about that. I know there's a lot of people out there like, Bitcoin maxis and other people that are like, oh, they sell onto the market and it suppresses the price. Yes, they do. That's how they fund their business. That's how Ripple makes money. You can be mad about that, or you can understand their business model, and they're able to fund their business and get adoption of the network and the protocol without all of it working yet, because they can sell XRP to fund their business and grow it and do all the things that they're looking to do to be able to develop the network, get it decentralized, and get it to market where it is going to get adoption and traction. It's not a bad thing, right? It's a bad thing for price appreciation. Like if you're here to see XRP go to the moon, them suppressing price isn't great for that, but it is fantastic for settling payments. You need price stability. And that's what it's been doing. Until it's needed to be able to settle global transactions, then they're going to have to push it to a much higher price to be able to provide liquidity in those circumstances. And I think that's going to happen as well. This person's asked about the escrow lots of times. Sorry, I keep missing this, but I did answer it now for you. Bags have been packed for years. You and me both, brother. You're not alone. Can we use your services in Canada? Yes, you can. We partner with Aaron Grinhaus up there. He's in Toronto, and he can provide you the estate planning that you're going to need to be able to protect your assets as they grow and mitigate taxes there in Canada. And happy to make an introduction to him if you just want to email us at info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. Happy to get you, what that looks like. So they do sell $1 billion onto the market. There's $1 billion released from the escrow each month. They don't always sell the $1 billion onto the market. Most of the time, it's somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 XRP that move onto the market, and that's enough to hold the supply and demand at the current value so that the price doesn't move substantially. Can you repeat what you said about joining with an LLC? So I haven't talked about this tonight, but if you do want an LLC, we do provide that service specific for managing your digital assets in a holding company. That's how we do it. This is not a trading company for your crypto. This is a holding company that manages your investments that happen to be digital assets. And there's a reason we structure it that way for the long-term growth and viability of the company. So but if that's something you're interested in, you can reach out. You can go to digitalfamilyoffice.io. And you can set up an LLC with us. It's done in 3 to 5 business days. You just go to the LLC form there on the site. It's normally $3,000, and that's what most attorneys would charge you to be able to, write up the operating agreement and structure this the proper way and file your EIN number and get your registered agent and file with the state for the articles of organization, get you a certificate of good standing, give you an SOP on how to move your assets in there. The operating agreement alone, most of the time, is somewhere between $1,800 and $2,500 just for that piece. We do all of it and more. We also, send you a video on how to set up a bank account for the LLC to be able to take profits when it's time. Just so that you know how to do that without causing any red flags or issues for a crypto LLC. We get all of that for $1,500. So if you do want, everything end to end for your LLC, for your digital assets, if you have less than $50,000 to $80,000 worth of digital assets, just buy more digital assets. You don't need an LLC yet. But if you are in that area or higher, could make a lot of sense to go ahead and establish an LLC for the $1,500. So the code to get the $1,500 offer, because again, we normally charge $3,000, is 50 off 50 OFF DAG, like Digital Ascension Group LLC. So that's 50 off DAG LLC, gets you everything end to end, all that you need for an LLC to hold your digital assets and manage them within 3 to 5 days. And again, that's at digitalfamilyoffice.io. But this person has asked, can you repeat what you said about joining with an LLC? So I'm assuming you're talking about the funds and how we produce returns for our clients at Digital Wealth Partners on their XRP. And in the next 6 days on XLM, we'll be able to take XLM for custody. And then hopefully within the next 30 days here, you'll be able to put that to work to be able to earn returns on your XLM also. You should be able to. So with that, you do have to have an LLC or a trust or an IRA to work with Digital Wealth Partners. The minimums, again, over there are at least 100,000 XRP or $500,000 invested in digital assets to be able to work with them and get access to the returns on digital assets. And we're agnostic. Right now, it's mainly just XRP, but we will provide returns on HBAR, XDC, XLM. We can do Bitcoin, we can do ETH, we can do Sol. But all of those, if you want to earn returns on them in a risk mitigated way, in institutional grade custody, where it's insured and bankruptcy remote, we provide all that and a bag of chips for people at Digital Wealth Partners if you want to go check it out. And again, if you want more information on that, all you have to do is email info@digitalwealthpartners.net, or you can go to the website and fill out the contact us form. And that'll get you in contact with one of our advisors or onboarding specialists. Sean Sides says, if cap gains are equal to 0, is interest taxable yearly? I'd assume the returns you're talking about. So that would still be income. So if you do sell your digital assets, you would pay no taxes. However, you're kind of like selling the golden goose, right? I prefer infinite banking. So if there are cap gains on the XRP or whatever other digital asset, you're able to mitigate taxes pretty well when borrowing against it versus selling it. But even if they do make cap gains 0, if you use the assets to produce income, it will be taxable. And I'm with you guys, just like everybody else. I hope they remove the IRS. I hope the IRS goes away. Excited to see, people that are less than $150K a year not paying taxes. I think that's great. Tariffs, people have their feelings about that. I think they'll be good in the long term. Excuse me. But as far as the returns or the interest earned on your digital assets, that will be taxable as long as income tax is around. If it's more than the 150 grand, if that goes through. So again, if you have it inside the LLC or inside of a trust or inside of an IRA, you do have a way to be able to mitigate those taxes much more so than an individual would. This person's asked about staking. So we don't do staking for XRP. That's not what we do. So to kind of go back through this for people that may not have been watching earlier, if you work with Digital Wealth Partners, you signed fund documentation, we run a hedge fund, you're able to contribute in kind to that fund. We work with sub-advisors with proven track records over the past 5 years with market neutral strategies. So they're not ever going to make you 50 or 100% on your money, but they are going to make you somewhere between 15 and 30% every single year, regardless of market volatility or direction or any of that, based on their track record. previous results don't guarantee any future returns, but I think they're both at around 10% already this year, and we're only in March. So both doing pretty good so far. And we'll be able to participate here in all of Q2 for our clients that are accredited and want to participate in that opportunity. They'll be able to put their XRP to work with a line of credit is how it works. There's no recourse on the assets. It's not like you borrowed against them or the sub-advisor did that. Their line of credit just goes up and down based on the value of the assets at the time. They never draw down the full line of credit, but they trade that in their strategy. So you kind of like, this is my get your cake and eat it too strategy. You're long XRP, you get all the appreciation and benefit there, but you're able to generate cash flow in the meantime if that's something you're interested in. And if you wanted to borrow against it, we have the way to be able to issue lines of credit or loans against the XRP. This person says, why just pay 150K and above? I make 250K, pay 10K a month in taxes. Look, man, I'm in the same boat as you. Like, we do pretty well. I would love it if the IRS completely went away, but it's not. I got to live in the world that we live in, You can't make everybody happy. You're not ever going to make everybody happy unless they just removed all taxes. That would make everybody happy, which I don't think they can do. Maybe over time, but they're even if they remove the income tax, because it is illegal, they're only supposed to be able to charge that if we're at war, which we haven't been for a while. You're still going to have capital gains on stuff. You still got gift tax. You still got estate tax. You still got there's other taxes, right? States have taxes. We started to see some states remove their income tax, which is cool. But in a digital world where there's stable coins and they're able to tax people real time on transactions, I think that if they just move to a flat tax, a lot of people would be very happy about that. And yeah, I would. This person says no tax on Mars. Yeah, I mean, no tax in Dubai except for the value added tax. Puerto Rico's got a 4% flat tax. So there are taxes in Puerto Rico, but very little in comparison. No cap gains tax there in Puerto Rico. You have to live there. There's some stipulations around that. I know that sounds like this magical fairy dust awesome situation. But if you move to Puerto Rico, you have to live there at least 6 months in a day out of the year. And their infrastructure is not great because they don't have any taxes there in Puerto Rico. So it's not like they have, if there's a hurricane, you're just without power for weeks at a time, potentially without water for weeks at a time. Hopefully you got a backup generator in your own well and some thermodynamic deal to be able to heat and cool your house. Hopefully you've got, $50 million or more if you're moving to Puerto Rico and you're going to dump probably 10 million of that into a property to get it sustainable when there are problems with the infrastructure there. So just be aware of that. Yeah, Stan, thank you, this person on the horse, for giving them the code for the LLC. Got a couple more super chats, and then we'll probably wrap it up for tonight. We've got Danger Pig. Interesting name. They say, does the LLC own wallet or assets in wallet? Both. In other words, can you have a wallet with 200 XRP and only 100 of it is for the LLC? You would need to segregate wallets. So whatever wallet you use on the capital contributions page is owned by the LLC. If you want to keep assets outside the LLC, you would need to separate that wallet, and that wallet would be owned by you as the individual. The other wallet that you listed as the capital contribution would be owned by the LLC. And so if you wanted to keep 100 in the LLC and 100 in your personal name, you would split that 200 into those two wallets accordingly. Smash the like button, says Living Legacy. Thank you, sir. Hope you're doing well. Happy to see you here tonight. Fire Marshal Bill just says LLC owns it. Yeah, and again, I want to provide you context and the ability to segregate stuff if that's something you're interested in. But in the circumstance you mentioned, the LLC would own it. We've got Rhythmic Excursions. Interesting. Hi, Jake. Do you see quant rising in the future? I don't see the value proposition for quant like a lot of people do. I know that they're part of the Digital Pound Foundation. Overledger is integrated with a lot of things. It's compliant with certain standards for messaging. The problem is the token doesn't settle value on that network. It's only used to pay the fees. There are some smart people that I regard and respect that do see price appreciation for quant. I haven't been able to discern like how that actually happens. Again, quant's another one I made a bunch of money on early on. I got in at $7 before it ran up to 150. So the earlier you are on stuff, the better off, especially if there's speculation on things. Again, I understand the tokenomics around quant. I understand the decimal places and how that works. I have a hard time understanding the value proposition as the network scales, again, because you just pay fees to be able to participate on the network with quant. It doesn't actually settle value on Overledger. So could it rise? Sure. How much? I have no clue. We get a couple more super chats. We have Textured Puma. They say, is there a trading limit on a holding LLC? No. I would put it this way. If you plan to trade frequently, if you're going to have more than 2 trades a month, you probably want to move to a trading LLC, which is a different NAICS code than a holding company. And the reason for that is a trading company, you're not going to be able to take advantage of long-term capital gains. But the short-term capital gains or income that you're going to have off of the trades, you're going to be taxed on the total gain or loss at the end of all those trades, not each individual transaction, if it's in a trading LLC. So it's all income. You can't take advantage of long-term capital gains because you're trading frequently. Like that's the whole stipulation, right? If you do plan to hold assets over the long term, you might, and we have people that do this. We have people that have a holding company for their long-term bag, and then they have another LLC that's their trading company for their, more frequently traded assets, and they've segregated those wallets, and they, participate in different ecosystems. And one, again, is just held for the long-term gains and the benefits there, while this one is used to trade more frequently. And again, that threshold is around like 24 trades a year, 2 trades a month is when I would start to look at like probably setting up a trading LLC. And we can do that too. If you want one or the other, all you have to do is let us know that. We have set up trading LLCs for people as well. We got Izzy P. What's up, Izzy? How are you, sir? He says, what's up? What's going on, man? When XRP flies, will others fly too? I'm going to say no. And here's the reason why for that. I could be wrong. Would love to be wrong. Just let me say that. I don't own anything other than XRP, so I'm biased. Take it with a grain of salt, okay? When BlackRock in 2023, November 2023, I think it was like November 13th or 14th, somebody found the iShares trust that was filed in Delaware for an XRP ETF for BlackRock. XRP decoupled from the rest of the market. It doubled in price in like 15 minutes. And then it was announced that, that was fake and that it was, the DOJ was investigating, and Bloomberg came out and said, oh, it's not real. Even though Ripple never made any type of like anything, they never said anything about it. BlackRock also never said anything about it. They retweeted the Bloomberg stuff, but they never actually made a statement. Neither one of those, which is highly unlikely. Like it's very unprofessional to not say anything about that. If it really were fake, they would have said something. But anyway, my whole point with that is XRP decoupled completely from the rest of the market. And so it's my anticipation that when we see when we see the filing of the BlackRock ETF and the ETFs get approved, XRP is going to decouple from the rest of the market, and all of the liquidity is going to flow into that asset. It's not going to be followed by a lot of the other stuff. And again, that's my thesis as to why I only own that and I'm not diversified. So again, take it with a grain of salt. I could be completely wrong. I'm just some guy on the internet that thinks about it a certain way and has biases. So just my 2 cents. Not financial advice. Soaring Eagle, thank you for the super chat. They say, hey, Jake, how are you? Thank you for all you do in the Beyond Broke Mastermind. He's Carbon One. Awesome. Or he or she is Carbon One. Very glad to have you in the group. I don't qualify for an LLC yet. Would like to know if possible recommendation to get a business account now and move into an LLC after price appreciation. So like a sole proprietorship, just set that up. It's still going to cost you, well, I feel like a DBA and a sole proprietorship, but you're not going to get the benefits. Well, I guess you would be able to mitigate taxes, but you're not going to get the limited liability. You're not going to be able to get the credit stuff. Like a sole proprietorship, again, is going to use your LLC or your EIN number. You're not going to get your own separate EIN number. Let me think on this. I don't think there's a way to do it where it's an effective way to do it. But that's also because I haven't considered it. I haven't spent time, because just the LLC is super simple to do for most people. I get that you want to be proactive, and I really do appreciate that. But again, the amount of money that you spent on a DBA or a sole proprietorship or all this stuff would probably be better spent just dollar cost averaging into more digital assets. And then when they appreciate, then you can set up the trust or the LLC or spend the money on, estate planning and a lot of the other services that we provide. Until then, you're going to have a higher ROI and better returns, and do better if you just keep buying assets. So I really do appreciate people wanting to be proactive, though, because that's the whole point of what I'm trying to convey. Like, if you are here now and you do have a significant allocation, whatever that means to you in digital assets, being proactive is only going to help you, especially if they really do make a lot of money for you. Getting an education on financial products now, understanding how to mitigate taxes and the tax code, looking at how to set up your estate in the most effective way, maintain anonymity. There's just a lot of things that they don't teach you in school. We talk about a lot of that stuff in the Mastermind and provide educational content around that for our members there. And again, really do appreciate you being part of the community. And I'll get back to you. I'll think about that. And if there is anything that I come up with, I'll put it out there in the group. I am at the end of the chat here, which is unusual. I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple more over here on TikTok. We are at an hour and a half, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up as soon as this one's done. He says, "Great job. You've gone live for 90 minutes. Don't forget to take a break." Yeah, I normally do like an hour and a half. I want to make these digestible for people that listen back to them later on. I try to keep most of the content in the Mastermind to 30 minutes to 2 hours, somewhere in there for people that are able to listen back to it. You can kind of bump up the speed, 1.5 times if you want to get through it a little bit faster. So Barnes says, "I'm not diversified either. Feel absolutely 100 about it." I'm with you. Like, there's been lots of times I've moved out of XRP after I consolidated, and every time I'm like, I think I'm just going to move it all back. So I sleep good at night owning only XRP. Do you help set up trust in the Cook Islands? Yes, we do. We work with Brandon Avergon and his team. He used to be an estate planner for the Rockefeller Family Office. He helps us establish PPLI for our clients, which is private placement life insurance. He's a consultant that we work with to establish things in the Cook Islands or in Switzerland or in BVI or in Nevis. Any of those jurisdictions we can establish entities in or trusts, depending on what's going to be best for your situation. So happy to have that conversation if you want to reach out. Again, it's just info@digitalwealthpartners.net. Cryptos to invest in. I can't tell you what to invest in. I'm not a financial advisor. If you want to, work with Digital Wealth Partners, they can advise you. They can tell you to buy XRP, but I can't do that. So anyway, things that I think are interesting that probably you could do some research on would be XRP, XLM, HBAR, Algorand, Ondo, Avalanche, Axelar, DAG. All of those, I think, are good opportunities potentially in the crypto market. Potentially, we'll see. I keep seeing April 2nd date. What is that date? Do I need to buy more before that? Don't put yourself in a position where you can't pay your bills. So in some calendars, April 1st is New Year's. There's been a lot of speculation about, fireworks and chains breaking and New Year's, and a lot of that stuff's been conveyed. So, April 2nd would make a lot of sense as the first day of, it's also, so Japan's financial new year ends on March 31st. So that'd be the second day of their financial year. So Yoshitaka Kitao said that all of Japan's banks would be using XRP by January of 2025. Maybe he was talking about their fiscal year here in the next week that happens. So we'll see if that's the case or not. Again, if you are interested in joining the mastermind, we'd love to have you there in that community. You just want to go to beyondbroke.com here listed. And you can use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO. Get you a free month there in Carbon One or the social membership. Social is $25 a month. Carbon One's $100 a month. Carbon One gets you access to all of the private deals that we run there in the group, and some educational resources on the website that are not available to social. We do have in real life events. We invite everybody in the mastermind to those, and we'll continue to build out services and product offerings and more value on the other side of price appreciation. And again, on the other side of a $10 XRP, we're going to lock it down. Everybody that's in now gets locked in at the current prices. So again, like if you got in for a free month and then the prices go up, like you're locked in, even if you didn't pay yet, which is, a big value add. Not trying to sell you on it, but kind of trying to sell you on it because I think it's a big value. Because on the other side of this, like that community is going to be multi-millionaires and billionaires, kind of like a Tiger 21. If you want to go check that out, that's kind of the long-term vision for it. So we have that. If you do need an LLC for digital assets, please go over to digitalfamilyoffice.io, fill out the LLC form. You can use the code 50OFF, 50OFF DAG, like Digital Ascension Group LLC. So that's 50OFF DAG LLC. Gets you everything all in that you need for an LLC to manage your digital assets for $1,500 all in. And again, if you do want to participate and earn returns on your XRP, you can reach out to digitalwealthpartners.net. Go to that website and click on the Contact Us form, and one of our advisors will reach out and explain that opportunity for you. Or you can email info@digitalwealthpartners.net. With that, I hope that you guys have a wonderful evening, a wonderful week. We will be back Wednesday for the Q&A at the same time, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And until then, God bless, and we will see y'all on the next one.